we started. Sorry, I had to make sure that was going. We essentially we came back to my place and we hung out and watched YouTube videos until about 3 in the morning.
Sounds about right.
Many a beverage was partaken, but I really got to know you specifically because at in 2005 I was living in Maine, and I don't do this anymore, but at the time I considered myself a bit of a writer, and I was doing reviews for a site called Transform Online, and I would get just tons and tons of CDs, which was cool. At the time I was a sponge, so I was like super stoked to get a bunch of music. And I got this little EP at the time from a band called Relay. And I remember specifically thinking like, okay, whatever, like just throwing it in because there was quite a bit of, I mean, it was hit or miss with these CDs, but I adored this EP. Like I at the time it was like literally played all the time. I still listen to it occasionally because it's on Spotify. I think the full length is on Spotify. Um, but I loved it. Like I gave it like a whatever would have been a 5-star A+. Like it was amazing.
So you were one of the a huge early proponent, definitely.
Totally.
It still is. But yeah, at the time it was like it's always tough starting starting a band and like putting a record out and like not knowing what kind of response you're gonna get, and then like seeing some like really something really positive that also I think seemed like generally aware of what we were trying to do was really nice. So thanks.
Oh no, thank you. I mean, I think it was about 2007ish because I kept up with what you were doing at the time, and I drove. You guys played a show in either Indiana or like along the border of Michigan or something like that. But me and a buddy who I turned on to your band was like, let's do it. Let's drive. Let's go see these guys. I really want to see them live. And you guys were fucking awesome. It was a weird bill. If I remember, it was like 5 or 6 bands and you guys were sandwiched kind of in the middle, but we were so stoked to hear you guys live and you were great.
During the daytime, by any chance?
It might have been. I just know that I think I pulled one of the posters off the wall because you guys were on it. And I was like, I'm taking this.
I think it might have been when we toured with Limbic System, if you remember those guys.
That's right. You're right. You're right. You're right.
It was in God, not Lansing. I feel like it was somewhere near Flint, Michigan.
You're right. You're right. It wasn't I wanted to say Ann Arbor before, but I think you're right. I think it was like Flint.
Yeah,
Um
sadly.
Back in the day, my friend. So like what's your history like as far as that? Like were you in bands for a long time before you did Relay, or was it just kind of a thing like were you a recording guy before that, or
I guess my head shake doesn't translate. I played guitar when I was a kid. I'll try to make this quicker than it could be. So I played guitar
oh,
as a kid, did it for years. I just like skateboarded forever, and for some reason I couldn't do both. And then picked it up again in college because I had a friend who knew like we had a lot of the same taste, and he knew how to play like Dinosaur Jr. and like I don't know Blues Explosion and like Team Dredge, like all over the map. But stuff that I really loved, and I was like, man, I should start playing guitar again. And so at the same time, I started taking a recording class, and that recording class had 2 4 tracks that we could like take out generally whenever we wanted because there were only like 10 people in the class. So and nobody was really like competent fit for the 4 tracks. So I would get that in like an SM58 and just set it up in my dorm room and like play guitar and record at the same time. I also had a drum machine, an old Elisa's thing. And so I would use that and then the guitar and then like, do a lot of stuff like a lot of backwards recording, just trying to learn stuff, about the process, but also like having no real fundamental grounding. So I did a lot of kind of weirder stuff. There was a time in which I put a slowed down toilet through a flanger because I thought it would sound good. And that's just anything about anything. But I would still do that today.
hey, you know what? I mean, you can. it's interesting. Like we my current band, we had a bucket list of things. I've always wanted to record with you too. Like eventually one day I will. But trying out new things is always like the thing, right? I mean, experimenting with pedals is kind of a thing a lot of guitar players do, but like, just trying to dial in your own sound. And that was really what I loved about your music, and I still love about your music specifically, is that it didn't sound like everything else that I was listening to. Like I knew what it was adjacent to, but your voice, I think one of as much as I loved the guitar tones, I loved your voice probably the most of any of the singers, because you had kind of like it sounded authentic, if that makes any sense. And like that can be tricky when it comes to rock bands or whatever you want to call it, but like specifically had a flavor all its own, and I dug it. So
Before I realized that I sing better like higher, like pitch wise. Because back then I would sing, I was probably like, I don't know, 3 or 4 notes further off than I should have been. But in a way, it kind of worked because of that.
well, it blends with the guitar, the guitar noises just right, and you can tell like pretty early on too with that music, and even in Arc and Round, and there was this way that your voice would blend so well with like shimmery guitars and synths and stuff. And now at the time, you with Relay, did you set out to start a band, or was it like a thing where I was like, okay, well, I'll write these songs and just kind of go with it? Or
I think initially I started out just kind of doing a bigger version of what I was doing with a 4 track in college, where I just like, then I had a 16 track, like reel to reel, and like I had a loft space in Philly, and just making recordings and just learning, more and more about how to write and like ways to like manipulate, music. Um, and I wasn't, I mean, I think I wanted to start a band to some extent, but I wasn't like seeking anyone out. And then I met our drummer, Gerard, who
mm-hmm.
was working at a coffee shop in Old City, Philadelphia, which is like nice kind of like, historical area. Anyway, he was working, and it was such a name drop. It was kind of funny. He was like, you look a lot like my friend Jeremy Barnes. And I knew who that was randomly enough. He was like the drummer for Neutral Milk Hotel, and he had Hawk and Hacksaw. He actually drummed for Broadcast at one point too.
Oh,
But
nice.
it was just like one of those things that like how would really random that I knew about that. And then we just started talking, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm a drummer," and like got his info, and we started playing together. And then it got to a point where it was like, all right, how much? And we played a few shows like that. It's just a 2 piece, and we could fill the space because Gerard's kind of an insane drummer, and I can make a lot of noise. So yeah, but then I ultimately realized I wanted like something, like a band that could fully play the stuff that I was working on. Um, so it kind of just evolved into that. But I've never thought about it before, but I could kind of give Gerard credit for that.
That's
Um,
cool.
I don't know if it would have happened otherwise. Maybe at some point, but
Now when you filled out the band, now I remember specifically it was Mikkel, or your female, she was playing keyboards, and then you had, I guess, I'm trying to remember all their names specifically. I remember hitting off really well with the drummer when we hung out at my place afterwards.
sorry, Arc and Round or Relay.
Arc and Round.
It was Matt. A little
Okay,
bit.
Matt. Yeah. He was the one that was like turning me on to all these like really insane YouTube video wormholes. Very funny guy. But so you had a 4 piece, and then was now I never got to ask you this, so forgive me if it's on a podcast and it's awkward, but was Relay and Arc and Round, was it just like I'll just change the name because whatever, or was it like a natural thing? Or
That's actually a good question because like I think I was too much of like a baby to like. I was really frustrated with how things were with Relay, and like I didn't really want to play music with Gerard anymore. we were good friends, but it was time to move on. And he just seemed like he wasn't that into it anymore. And he started his own band. So it was just like kind of time to cut the cord. And then like, I don't know, I didn't really know what else to do. I felt like I couldn't kick him out of the band. So I actually just stopped making music for like a couple of years almost,
Mm-hmm.
touring with like Twilight Sad and Frightened Rabbit as like a tour manager and sound guy. And that was, taking up a lot of my time. And by the time I got back to wanting to work on music and having the time to do so, I just felt like, you know, we were. I felt at that point like, and this is kind of a stupid mentality, I think in hindsight, but or just incorrect. Like I think it might be nice to have like a fresh start and like have a
Yeah.
new. It's going to be a little differently musically, but not a lot. It's still a variation, I guess, on the same like aesthetic. And so it felt important to me to like just make a distinction. And I don't. It had its blessings and its drawbacks for sure. Um, but it was, I think, definitely I wanted to have like a kind of a more drastic change at that point.
Well, I find it, I don't know, and maybe I'm just trying to relate, but I mean, two things. One, you know, ultimately sometimes it can be easier to have a blank page than a crowded notebook. There's more freedom in that. And two, I wanted to mention too, you mentioned with Gerard, you know, saying you look like the drummer from Neutral Milk Hotel. I had the same thing happen to me with the guitar player who was with me when we went and saw you guys play. I was like, damn, that guy looks like Jack White, or
That's
like
a
Jack White and Ken Andrews. Maybe he plays guitar too. Let's fucking jam. So I mean, it looks kind of do. I mean, it's like you can tell the guys who have beers. It's the guys who like craft beer and fucking dogs a whole lot. You can see them coming a mile away. So there's a bit of that. It's not necessarily a stereotype you want to live in and breathe and think every time you see somebody, but you can kind of get a feel for people, I guess.
it's also like a good intro point for people like if you want to be using music, and you're trying to feel out if the other person is like I don't know, I can't think of much of a better way to field it than like be like, you know what, you look like X person that you maybe don't look like, but still.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So you went on and you mentioned tour managing. I actually think it was you of all. I we've been friends and like we've always been cordial, and you're super sweet, and I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. I've followed what you've been up to, and like I'm one of those people. Like I just want to support my friends, and you super talented guy, and you mentioned tour managing, but also obviously you have uniform recording that you do. Was tour managing an option or a thing that you had a goal, or was it just something like, hey, I know these guys, I know what they need to sound like live?
No, well, so the tour managing and the doing sound are they're like pretty distinctly different jobs that I basically was doing both of.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who ran, I don't know, you remember that band Mice Parade at all? Uh,
Uh, it sounds familiar.
this guy Adam Pierce who ran our Bubble Corps, and then also was the primary guy at Fat Cat Records in the U.S.
Okay.
Sigur Rós, Moom, Animal. And so Twilight Sad and Frank Rabbit were both on that label. And I had expressed interest, in doing some like tour stuff. And I think Adam, like to Adam, and I think he would just wanted to throw that opportunity my way. But also, I'll say this: he like definitely Adam's a character, and he definitely knew that he could get me for cheap at that point. And it's crazy. Like my first tour was with two Scottish bands and a Canadian band, and I was doing sound for both Scottish bands. One who was first and one who was headlining. This band
Oh
Aaron
wow.
said. So it was just insane. Like these drive, and I was the only one who could drive in the U.S. because they're all Scottish. They didn't have anything like an international license or anything.
Well,
Um,
they want to put down their what do you say, broadswords and shit from fucking Scotland. I mean, I don't know what they did, but I'm sure they were cool. I mean, I'm assuming the Twilight Sad guys were probably pretty interesting to meet. And
Yeah, funny dynamic at that point. Like they two of the members left, and like James and Andy are still in the band, and they've had some people come in and out, like the dude Doc, who's uh, one of the three members of oh God, what's it called? Really, am I forgetting their name?
no, of the Twilight Sad.
Very popular Scottish band that you probably know, female singer, and then
Cranberries? No, I'm off.
band. Oh,
Mogwai.
no, I'll think of it. This is like my classic scenario where like I don't remember, and then 10 minutes later.
No,
Uh,
it's so good.
uh, yeah. So it was just so intense, and like doing like a lot of 10-hour drives on the West Coast, stuff like that. Um, I'm sorry, I'm trying to go back to your actual question. I I think it was just me wanting to like spend some time traveling and touring, and like I kind of felt like if my band isn't going to have the opportunities to do this extensively, because we didn't have a booking agent, we did a lot of stuff like through friends or like yeah, like acquaintance bands, or there were a couple booking agents who would help us, but they never. It's like a classic booking agent move where you'll sort of mysteriously help a band out for a while, but you won't actually book them. Um,
Mm.
which is, I think, partially is a way to like feel the scenario out. By the way, the band was Churches. That's what I was trying to
Sure.
remember.
Oh wow. Oh, my daughter loves it. Well, that's I was playing the game, was it Forza Horizon 5, and there was a Churches song in the, and so yeah, they've been on rotation. My daughter's even like that band, so sweet.
Yeah. So their band has seen a lot of drastic lineup changes on that tour. There was one show where like so I was also like in the role of like um I amateur therapist slash chorale. Like there's a show in San Francisco where the drummer who was not really totally equipped to tour, I think emotionally, um, he missed the cue for the very first song they were playing, um, and he freaked out and like ran off stage back to the green room. And I'm on the second floor, like the balcony, doing sound. And I turned to the house sound guy and I was just like, I'll be back in a minute. And I just had to run downstairs into the green room and like, convince him to come back on stage. Which that's crazy. Like that's never happened to me since then.
Wow. Was it just, you think it was anxiety, or
I wanted
like,
to go.
yeah, yeah.
He had like the people hit like a mark usually around like 2 weeks where they're just kind of like, they're either really loving it or they just want to like be, you know, in their familiar environment. And he was definitely, and he also didn't really get along with the other band members like super well.
Yeah, that sucks.
It was just, yeah, it was challenging. I have so many stories from all those tours, but that one specifically,
I mean, well, you had to play Dr. Phil and run backstage and be all like, "Hey, man."
I had to just basically say like point blank, if you don't play the show, we won't have enough money to get back across the country. Which was like sort of true enough.
True, yeah, true enough, and it worked, and you got through it, and that's good. But I think when I saw you, you were touring with War on Drugs, doing. I know True Widow was on that, and I was a huge fan of True Widow, which would have or put me in there because I remember specifically hearing them and being like, "Well, this is fucking awesome." And then just so happened you were there, so we got to hang out, have a beer, whatever. Uh, now were you working on their album at the time, or was it just, again, like you kind of knew the guys and they trusted you? Or
So, and we were playing the show as well.
it was either you were playing, I it might not have, it might have been Kurt Vile, actually, Kurt Vile and True Widow.
And so I did sound for Kurt for quite some time too. So I don't think oh, maybe I don't know. I can't remember if we ever played some shows with both of them together. We did some shows with Kurt and that band Woods, but yeah, I was probably just out doing sound and probably not tour managing for that.
Mm.
Yeah, was that in Michigan?
I think it was at the Blind Pig, Ann Arbor.
Yeah, okay, that would make sense. Yeah,
Yeah, it was an interesting thing because I was there, like obviously, it was cool enough to see you and see True Widow, but my brother was a huge Kurt Vile fan, and he had um I think the album that you worked with him on, Childish Prodigy.
yeah, that's one.
That was the one that my brother was obsessed with. He would play like I think at the time it was Lights at Sea. We would go do jaunts across the state or whatever out of state, and he was always playing that record. And I was like, it I had no it was even your friend, and I had no idea. I was like, oh, this is good. This is good shit. And then come to find out you were involved, and I was like, well, small
Yeah,
fucking world.
I mean,
Uh,
that, so much Philly stuff. I was pretty deep in the cut with,
yeah.
uh, so makes sense. But that's funny. Yeah.
So with recording and stuff, was it something that you, by doing things with Relay and say Arc and Round, that you just kind of expanded from there, or did it just?
In terms of like recording other projects, like
Yeah,
other
yeah,
bands.
yeah.
I think I honestly started recording other bands like as soon as I got an 8 track reel to reel, and like I knew at that point even that I wanted to work with other people and like record their music as well and like produce or whatever. Um, so there was this band. I lived in Boston with like 9 people at that point in this house that was falling apart. It was like classic post college move, and
Hmm.
anyways, and so we recorded a lot. They had this band called Fashion Cult, not Cult,
Okay.
and that was the first band I ever recorded. And we did that all 8 track reel to reel. And I remember at the time I had just gotten my first compressor, and I just like completely destroyed the drums. They sounded like popcorn popping, just for me not knowing how to use the thing. Um, but live and learn. So yeah, from day one, I kind of had that in mind. And then when I moved to Philly, I met Don DeVore, who kind of I guess you could call him like the musical director for the Lilies, who aren't like super active at this point, but they are playing some. Um, and Don is like, kind of the one who's been coordinating everything. And they're actually playing 2 shows in Philly pretty soon on New Year's
Oh,
Eve.
nice. Any Philly listeners, go to that show.
Go to the show. Yeah, it's probably going to sell out soon, I would imagine. And my friend Dash and I are going to, we're playing the first show, which should be a lot of fun. But anyway,
Awesome.
all right. So Don was just kind of like, I didn't know him at all, and I was like, but I knew he had like a long, list of stuff he's worked on, and like it's just like to this day, like just like I'd never seen somebody that motivated, and like have such a like weird fractured, uh, but thick vision. Um, so yeah, we started working together, and I was like building the studio out, and it just kind of went from there. Like in Philly, it was like projects started coming to me, but mostly because I had recorded the Swirlies back when I was in Boston.
That's a
And that,
sick band.
yeah, they're one of my favorite bands of all time. They're
Yeah.
actually probably when I started getting into recording at all. Like the Salons album, their
Hmm.
last, um,
It's because of you I got into broadcast.
that's great. Yeah,
Hmm.
another wonderful band. Um,
I and I think also when you guys played, didn't we? You might have come back another time, or maybe it was because we had the guy that was from US Maple who was in Invisible Hands, I think it was.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yep. I don't know where that show was. I can't remember. Oh, it was a house show actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we had we had our local two-piece friends Between Brains, I think was at the time. Really good guys. Like both one of the guys is like a bartender slash drink maker extraordinaire now in the city, and he's doing great. He's one of the best drummers I know. It's weird how like some of the best musicians on the planet just kind of roll off into like do something else completely non-music related and thrive, and that's great. But I miss them playing the drums or you know, noodling on guitars, but it happens. Life happens. We all adapt. So,
True. Um, yeah, so the swirlies thing was like an automatic entry point for me into recording in Philly, just because I mean, everyone in Philly. There were some bands that were like really widely held in like high regard in the scene, quote unquote. And it was like Roller Skate Skinny was like weirdly very popular in Philadelphia, which like no one really knows about them for the most part. It was Jimmy Shields, Kevin Shields' little brother's band.
oh, Jesus.
Great, actually. Horse Drawn Wishes is the one to check out.
Okay. Right
And
on.
they're also all like big Swirlies fans, So that was just like it was a good seal of approval to move here with. And people were willing to like, test the waters and work with me. And I still didn't know what I was doing really at all. But that's, that fake it until you make it or whatever is generally pretty accurate.
Well, I mean, you do. That's true. I mean, like, what is it? 80% of it is just showing up at the end of the day. So, you know, fucking just show up and press the buttons and, start screaming at people, be like, hey, fucking tune your bass or whatever, or don't tune it because that's what Sonic Youth does or something. I don't know. But that's awesome. So you basically you kind of essentially some people who had some some say or were doing some things and you just kind of trialed and errored it a little bit. But I mean, I'm looking at your video screen right now and it looks like you got quite a bit of equipment you've accrued over through the years and such.
Yeah.
Was it is there anything like with the recording that like as far as like a setup, like what was like the first couple things that you started using quite a bit or messing around with that you've kind of found your like I guess you found your way into like doing tracking and mixing and all that sort of stuff.
Sure. I think like um probably the first like sort of professional machine. I mean, what's professional? It could be anything, but it was like a Tascam TSR8, which is like a half-inch 8-track. It sounds really good. They're great sounding machines, and they're built really well. And so I got one of those. I think right before I moved to Philly, and so that was just great. And it was just such a workhorse too, because I'd be working on my own and like constantly like fast forwarding, rewinding, play, just like um, really kind of hammering the thing, and it was always really reliable. So I would say like that machine, doing things to 8-track, and pretty early on, I kind of lucked into a microphone that I still like to this day is one of the my favorites is the Neumann KM84, which is an older mic. They typically use a lot for small diaphragm condenser, used a lot for like orchestral recordings,
Oh, nice.
string recordings, or I mean they're pretty broad. You can use them for a lot of things, but they were used a lot for that, and like say Nashville, bass guitar, banjo, etc. Just really natural sounding but flattering microphones.
Mm-hmm.
I just could kind of like that was back in the days before eBay would spell correct your searches.
Mm.
Spelled Neumann intentionally, and found a pair of KM84s for sale for like $600 or something. And these are microphones for about 2 grand a piece. Even then, they were probably like 1,200 or something. And I was just like, holy shit! And so I bought them and sold one and kept the other one, and it just became such a huge part of everything I did. um, because it just had like there's certain things that just have this like kind of indescribable sort of magic to them. And that microphone, I think it was the first time I ever really heard that, and it's like, oh wow, there's this like depth and like sheen um, that you can get out of certain things that really isn't that common. So yeah, that microphone I used the shit out of, and that was like my drum microphone, like main drum microphone for like probably 10 years.
Wow.
Um, for overheads, or like I would just always try to make it a microphone that caught the most of all the drums when I was recording, and use that as like the basis for you know. So that would be like the foundation of the whole record on a lot of stuff. Yeah,
You you kind of went with microphones there for a minute. Now with as far as amps, like I know you have a killer guitar sound on the stuff that you've done guitars for. Do you have like a rig that you go like is a go-to for say effects or just like guitars as far as like how you like your guitars to sound?
it kind of it changes, over time, but I'd say the one mainstay is like a '68 Fender Bassman that I've had since I lived like 20 years. But yeah, it's I have had it since I lived in my first Philly proper place. It was the loft that I had built a studio in. So it's a '68 Bassman with an original cabinet that I ended up selling. Like I don't know if you know those amps, but the cabinet for those is two 12s, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like chest high.
Oh
Um,
wow.
reason other than because it sounds good. So I ended up selling that because I wanted to like be able to use the amp live, blah blah blah. And that the cabinet is just not practical. So yeah, the '68 Bassman with the stock. I believe the speakers are
They're great speakers, whatever they.
yeah. So it's just a great sounding amp. And that's been like like that band Nothing when we recorded that was the primary sound for most of that record. And it's nice to have an amp that has a little bit of headroom if you're going to be using a lot of effects,
Yeah.
especially like crank distortions, etc. So I mean, it's like blisteringly loud, but it's still it's kind of worth it if you can do that. And then also, I guess on the flip side, the other amps I used a lot were, or and still do. I had an older Vox AC-15 when they were made by Marshall. That was phenomenal. It got there was a flood in my studio and it was upside down on the floor and it didn't make it.
Oh,
I keep the speaker. It's a Celestian Blue, which made a big difference. So it lives on in an Ampeg Gemini, which are also totally underrated, amazing amps for like anything. But
now
it's
when I saw you, you were playing like I think it was like a semi hollow body guitar at the time. Do you still play on that style, or do you kind of alternate, or?
kind of alternate. I honestly haven't been playing. I actually just started playing guitar again. I hadn't really for like a couple years. And I bought an ES 335, like a
Oh,
Gibson, yeah, like a Gibson Studio 2013. I just recently bought it, and it's just like it's just insanely nice. I
yeah.
also, you know, I have like kind of like sort of fingers that are a little, not, yeah, like chubby fingers or something. If I were like playing like an open A chord on like the base of the neck is just like not comfortable on some guitars. And
Yeah.
like body, a Moss Ray, it's amazing, but I just like kind of can't play it. And I was like really wanting a hollow body that I could just sort of relearn. I bought like a Smith's songbook.
There you go.
Johnny Marr's amazing, and
Yes.
so when the most I was playing was generally on my jazz master. I was like a Japanese jazz master from the mid '90s. Um, I would say, or yeah, like a varying group of semi hollow bodies, like I guess a casino, but I think that's full hollow body, and then a three Sheridan into
Hmm.
that guitar. Yeah, so yeah, I kind of alternate.
Nice. That's awesome. Now, as far as like tunings, do you just go standard or do you mess around with any like open tunings?
Uh,
Like, where do you like to write in?
at this point, I use I think it's OpenD. It's like DAD, F sharp AD.
Mm-hmm.
And the tuning that all the relay stuff and a lot of the arc and round stuff is in is like EAE, G sharp, C sharp E, which is the
Mm.
same thing, but like up, a step. And standard, like, I really honestly wish I used it more at earlier points. I've kind of like in like backwards, I've like been drawn to standard tuning now, where I'm just kind of like, seeing seeing what's out there.
No, I'm with you. I started messing with like my the singer for my band right now has a baritone, and so I was messing with that, and it's interesting because the metal part of me when I was growing up in high school was like, yeah, I want to be fucking the Melvins and all this stuff, and I immediately assumed I had to tune to A, and then it was like, no, not really. I mean, you can kind of do that. You can find little things and like the way pedals are with octave pedals and shit like that and different things. I mean, yeah, possibilities are endless, but it's always fun to mess with that. But I agree. Like sometimes it's just like you get your guitar in standard tuning and you're like, well, this is a lot easier than I was making it. But you there is some of that love of like the dissonant kind of experimentation that you can get from say different types of tunings and things like that. What were your bands growing up like when you were in like I guess college or that era?
High school, like it's kind of like carried over from. I lived in like kind of the middle of nowhere, so I like found a lot of the music that I like through like skate cover or skate videos and
Mm-hmm.
album covers. So like there's a place near me that had like this like section of like uh mystical like independent quote unquote cassettes, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Even though it was like Evolve by Sonic Youth, I got that strictly the cover, and that's still one of my favorite records. And
That's
like
awesome.
Focus Abortion Technician was
Mm-hmm.
also, that's still one of my favorites. But yeah, at that point, like it was mostly like Joy Division, The Smiths, My Bloody Valentine. Although I was a bigger Sebadoh fan than I care to admit, but yeah,
That's good, man.
yeah, totally. They had their moments. I would say Eric Gaffney was the best part of that band.
I will say that you would get you would be very proud of my oldest daughter. She's 15 now and she owns every Smiths record, which isn't a ton, but still she's
Yeah,
on the right path. And I took her to see The Cure this summer, which I guess the Twilight Sad was opening. So small world again, but it was amazing. Says the Cure is her second favorite band of all time. The Smiths will never be topped according to her. So
that rules. Yeah, the Smiths are all my all-time favorite.
I get you. So okay, so those were your bands, and then we talked about your gear. Now, what kinds of things are you up to nowadays? I know you've got and I'll link this in the description if anyone's curious to the Uniform Recording website. But as far as like stuff that you got going on in the future in the docket, I know you said you started picking up guitar and tinkering around.
Yeah, I've started playing guitar a bit more and like kind of curious to see where that goes. I'm somewhat resistant to the idea of writing many songs again, so I'm just kind of seeing how I can integrate it into like more of the. I've been doing a lot of synth stuff, like a lot of modular that I got into over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a whole world that I kind of was a little apprehensive about being a part of, but once I started, I was like, okay, I get it, and it's just like it's limitless, for better or worse. So yeah, so like on a personal level, like been doing a ton of modular stuff, and then also been kind of writing like instrumental hip hop stuff for a couple people, and we'll hopefully be collaborating on it soon. Um, and my friend Dash. I don't know. I'll send you a link to the record Dash and I just did. I think it's up your alley. But
Well,
like my friend Dash Lewis who performs as Gardner. He's incredible. Uh, and so we've been working on a second record. And then in terms of the studio, I guess that's a good question. I don't really have like a ton of stuff on the docket that I'm not already working on. Yeah, so we'll see where that goes. Um, yeah.
is it now you usually take bookings through your like do people contact you through the website or do you get a lot of people locally or internationally? I know you said I'm trying to remember just off the top of my head. Obviously, Kurt Vile and War on Drugs and Nothing, and you've worked pretty predominantly in the area. Do you get a lot of emails? Do you kind of have to fashion like your studio time out like months in advance or?
It really depends. I mean, like, say when Lost in the Dream came out, which is the last War on Drugs record that I worked on, like, very, very heavily. Um, I was like flooded constantly, and I was like kind of overcommitting myself and booking about 6 months out, maybe, and
Yeah.
stabilized. I think after that, you know, so I'd say at this point it's usually like a couple months out. And that's, I mean, it's a nice way to have it. Honestly, it can get a little overwhelming. But yeah, and like one of the records I'm working on right now is with a French band, like a French shoegaze band, and that's really cool.
What are they called?
Um, well,
It's okay. It's a French word, sacre bleu, I think.
Aufsenberg or something is the
Okay, right on. No, I love the French and I love shoegaze, so I'm sure I'll dig it. But no, that's awesome, man. What do you do? I mean, we can talk about music for days, but like what do you like to do to blow off steam?
uh, you know, that's a great question.
Candy Crush?
I can't get over it.
Yeah, I know, man. It's a money pit.
Yes. I like there are a lot of films I go through. I spend a lot of time, um, sort of like trying to broaden my uh, film horizons, hanging out with friends, going
Oh,
to
totally.
shows. Good.
Would you ever do like a film soundtrack? I feel like you'd be perfect for that.
Thanks. Yeah, I've done like a couple shorts before, and I don't know if you know Good Mythical Morning.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. A friend of the show is a huge fan. Loves that.
Yeah, I did the theme song for I'm not sure what season it started, maybe season three.
Mm.
They were like, I was friends with one of the people who, worked for them, and they were like, well, we're trying to find something that's like kind of like Boards of Canada meets Stereolab meets blah blah. And my
You're
friend
like,
Mike,
I shit that out for breakfast, brother. All right.
right? So yeah, my friend Feldman is like, okay, I know a guy, and
Mm-hmm.
that was great. Uh, and then I've done a few like short film scores, but I'd love to do more.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it's like pretty collaborative, with the director, it's seems like it's definitely more enjoyable. When you can kind of stretch out a little bit because that process is intense, uh, even at the level that I've worked on it.
When you mentioned that you like to watch films, do you have any current favorites, stuff that you've been binging or shows or anything like that?
Um, Probably the last film I saw that I was like kind of blown away by was La Jetée. I don't know if you know that one yet.
No, no.
Hour long. It's not even like proper quote unquote full length film, but it was made in like the late '60s. And the thing that I didn't even really uh, digest when I first saw it is that the whole film is composed of still shots by the director.
Hmm.
So in the film, it's just different stills, which is surprisingly fluid, and like the way that the I don't know the narration works and the way that everything is just put together is just like it's really striking. Like I've never seen anything like it, and it's really forward thinking, like sort of dystopian film, especially for that time period. It's kind of groundbreaking. So
I
that
I you said it was La Jetée?
like LAJETEE.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure. Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Trying to think what else I saw lately that I really was into. Um, the new Brandon Cronenberg film. I can't remember the name offhand.
Possessor.
There's one after that actually, which is
Oh,
awesome.
oh, the one with Mia Goth in it. I-
Infinity Pool.
Infinity Pool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say Fountain for some reason, but you're right. Infinity Pool. I love Cronenberg. I'm a huge, huge, huge David Cronenberg fan. And well, this last Halloween, Halloween's year round for me because I watch a ton of old horror and whatever. But specifically Cronenberg is so fascinating to me as a filmmaker because there's this really great interview if you find it on YouTube where it's him, Brian De Palma, and John Carpenter, and they're all sitting there, and it's like they're having like a almost like a horror movie summit where they're just talking about horror in general and like the cusp of the 80s and like the impact that Halloween had, Scanners had, and Carrie had, and they're discussing just kind of like how they approach horror and how different it is, and it's interesting to me specifically, and it's insane to me, but yet not. I mean, it's like you saying Kevin Shields' brother had a awesome band. I'm sure in some ways it's the same like genetics things, the way that these tastes and like things will get passed on. But Cronenberg specifically is so fascinating to me because he never, I mean, other than say The Fly being like a big success, he never really had his Halloween per se or his uh Carrie per se. He had like a big hit, but it wasn't his career has been so interesting to me. And I almost would say Cronenberg has had more better films or even more prescient films as far as movies that have lasted in some instance. I mean, that's all debatable. And like, there's certain movies that I think Carpenter excels in. And I think The Thing is the best horror movie of all time, but that's just me. I love Kurt Russell and I can't get over Wilford Brimley freaking out. So that's just what I like in a young Keith David. Uh but anyway, so you mentioned that Infinity Pool, and that's a relatively recent. I think you can probably rent that one on online or whatever.
Free on some streaming. I don't remember which. Maybe
Hmm.
another one that speaking of De Palma, I recently saw Sisters. I don't know if you know that one.
Mm-mm.
Fucking crazy. It's like just so unhinged and really strange and just really effective. It's just like it has this I don't know, just this vibe that's really intense that it stuck with me. Like it's just a feeling, from you'll get from certain things and it just stuck with me with that. Another one, I'll make this the last one is Possession. I don't know if you know Possession. Uh the Lewoski film. Uh
That's the one with Sam Neill, right? Yeah,
uh
it's like 1982. It's like the year I was born. Sam Neill's looking like a piece of candy in that, and the girl, I can't think of her. She won. She got nominated for that movie. I just watched that like a year ago for the first time because they showed it. I think locally at our we have like a Grand Rapids Film Society, and they try to put out like really good movies at our local theater. And yeah, that holy shit, that movie.
amazing. And it's so fucked up.
Yeah,
Um
it's if you're going through a breakup, that's a rough one. And considering I'm well, full disclosure, it hasn't been the best couple months for this guy, but and I'm sure you've been through it too. it's not fun, and that might be a rough one. Maybe trigger warning to anybody who's going through a breakup if you want to watch this movie, but it's rough.
Or giving birth to a baby. And
Or if you've got a thing about dairy products, milk, I don't know, like body horror stuff like that.
um, I'd say that was it's way up there. Such an incredible film. And Sam Neill, like I kind of like always forget, how fucking good he is.
Yeah, I always am like, what is this guy doing? I thought he was supposed to be looking for dinosaur bones. What is he doing in other movies? Or and he's aged really well. Like that's part of the thing about watching those old movies is that like holy shit, like the um these guys like I think there was a retrospective or a documentary about The Exorcist recently. R.I.P. William Friedkin, also amazing director. Um, and they were talking about Max von Sydow in that movie. He's like 44 and he's playing like the aged priest who comes in, with the Hail Mary at the end to try to save little Reagan. And it's crazy to look at that, and that age makeup is so good. You have no idea that like basically going to be that age for the next 40 years in film, but yet he looks, great as this old man, but he's only like 44, like I said in the movie, which now as I get older, I just keep thinking like, no, 60's the new 40. I'm young. I'm still young. I could still do shit. I could still eat Taco Bell at 3 a.m.
Like you're like 32. So although I didn't do the math on how old you actually are, so you're probably like 34.
Me?
You said
Uh, I'm getting up there, man. I'm 41 now.
there you go. Yeah, well, you don't look a day over 34.
Thanks, my dude. That's what we like to hear on this podcast. You look great too, man.
Yeah.
Uh, I I think you're doing. I'm your one of your biggest fans. I want you to do another Ark and Round record or something. I need more shoegaze and guitars and jangles and vocals. I love that stuff from you, man. I still play those songs. In fact, I'm going to end this episode with one of those songs because I think they fucking rules. Every time I played your stuff for my local musician friends up here in good old Michigan, they were just like, "Damn, this band fucking rules." Um, so if you haven't, I highly recommend you check it out. Anything, well, I guess we'll wrap this up. Anything as far as is your uh things I don't know, musically that you're into that you think people should check out, or
Uh,
advice?
I mean, there's a lot. Uh, yeah, but let's see. Death's Dynamic Shroud. Do you know them?
No.
Found them recently, and there's like this one track, "Love Is Easy," that's just incredible. There's a Dome. I don't know if you know Dome. That's a couple of the guys from Wire when they had like where they disbanded for a minute. Started that. That's pretty incredible. I've been like kind of obsessed with New Tissue from Suburban Lawns.
Oh,
So
okay.
uh, I mean, it's nothing like I like Suburban Lawns, but it's nothing at all like them. It sounds like
Okay.
Jerry Riley or something. And I think it's only on YouTube. I haven't found it anywhere else.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
Supposedly, like just you know, has disappeared. She's off the map, so no one can reissue it. I should put the heavyweight dude. I didn't even think of that. Yeah. Anyway, um, yeah, and John Bender, who is from Detroit, Michigan, actually. Uh,
Oh, shit. Represent.
Incredible. My dog is standing on his hind legs right now. Where'd
He
you go?
wants he wants to start a band with you. It's like, hey man, you guys are talking about guitars. I'm ready.
Just lost you, by the way.
Oh,
Where'd
you did? I'm right here. You hear me?
hear you? Yeah, yeah. I just can't see.
Oh, well, it happens. Shit, man. Well, I
So,
have your audio coming through still. I think what you alluded to there was good. and all the stuff we talked about, like, definitely. I mean, obviously, uniformrecording@gmail.com. If you want to email them, check them out on the website, linked in the description. Jeff, you're a man I look up to, and I appreciate you taking the time coming on and discussing the Haps and a little bit of the history. This series is kind of like, I've been interviewing some musicians locally, but also talking to some far and wide. My buddy John out in Portland, and now you in Philly, and I'm a huge fan of what you do, man. And it's like I said, I was a huge fan of Relay and Arc and Round, and you were very, very, very cool dude to sit and to talk about movies and music with, for real. Uh, but I wish you all the best, my man, and thank you for coming on. And hopefully we will talk again sometime soon.
I'll send you some links to some stuff.
Totally, totally. I'd love to hear anything you have and anything you have going on.